What up, y'all? Manase here, and welcome back to another episode of Mintermission. If you're interested in checking out additional Mintermission content outside of YouTube, you can follow my TikTok account. The link will be available in the description box down below. You can also follow me on Letterboxd, which will also be available in the description box. So for this episode, I thought it would be a fun idea to give you my favorite movie from every year I've been alive. This was a challenge that I've always wanted to do, and I've successfully managed to complete my list. And as I go through this list, go ahead and tell me down below in the comments section what your favorite movie is from every year you've been alive, or at least some of the years that you've been alive. Now, I do want to point out that I'm not trying to pick the best movie from every year. These are just my personal favorites. These are the ones that I love to watch and that mean the most to me. So let's get started with the year that I was born, 1998. And for this year, I'm going to go with The Truman Show, movie that somehow gets better and better with every rewatch. I remember watching this film in middle school for the first time, and it was one of those films that really stuck with me for a long time, mainly to do with its incredible and unique concept, where a character's whole life from a baby to an adult is secretly live streamed 24/7, and everyone and everything in his bubble of a world is fake. That is such an interesting concept. Jim Carrey gives one of his best performances in this, and it's one of the few films from his catalog where he's not his typical over-the-top goofy self, which shows his range as an actor. Moving on to 1999, I'm gonna go with Life. This is one of the most underrated movies of all time, and I don't think it got the love and respect that it deserved. It has a really nice comedy-drama balance. It's funny, it has a lot of heartfelt moments, and the chemistry between Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence is electric. It makes me wish that they did more films during the prime of their career. Moving on to the year 2000, and I have another Jim Carrey in this list, and it's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. For years, this was my favorite Christmas movie of all time, and it still is to this day. It's one of the few Christmas movies that is a must rewatch for me each and every winter holiday season. Jim Carrey embodies the role as the Grinch so much that I can't see any other actor play that role and do it better than him. It's hilarious, it's heartfelt, and as I've gotten older, I've grown to appreciate the world building of this film. With the production designs and the costume designs, it really brought Whoville to life, which I really appreciate. Moving on to the year 2001, and for this year, I'm gonna go with Monsters, Inc. This is one of my favorite Pixar films and a true classic from my childhood. It's insanely quotable, the jokes and emotional moments still hit every time I revisit it. Love Mike and Sully's dynamic, and I think they might be the best Pixar duo from the entire franchise. It has the perfect balance of comedy, action, drama, and adventure, and the Randy Newman score is just chef's kiss. Moving on to 2002, then for this year, I'm gonna go with Catch Me If You Can. Incredibly fun film. This has always been one of my favorite Steven Spielberg films, and over time, I've come to realize that it might be the favorite from his catalog. It's such a fun, high-stakes cat and mouse chase between Leo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks from beginning to end. And it's crazy that it's based on a true story due to how this con artist was able to forge millions of dollars in checks and pose as a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer. Moving on to 2003, and for this year, I'm going with Kill Bill, one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino films, and it's probably the most stylistic film of his career. It's a thrilling, ruthless revenge tale with Uma Thurman being a badass for an hour and a half with so much sauce and pizzazz. The fighting choreography is awesome, the music is catchy, the dialogue is sharp. Almost everything about this is flawless to me. Moving on to the next year, 2004. Now, this one was really tough for me. I had two movies listed in my notes. Do I go with Spider-Man 2 or do I go with Shrek 2? Two of the greatest sequels of all time, two of my absolute favorite movies of all time. And I think I'm gonna go with Spider-Man 2. for this year. This movie was the gateway to my love for the superhero movie genre. It's what got me into Marvel, it's what got me into Sam Raimi as a filmmaker, and it's what made me fall in love with Spider-Man in the first place. When we think about the character of Peter Parker, we think of him as the underdog. We think of him as the guy who struggles to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man leaks into his real life and it makes him suffer for it. And I think Spider-Man 2 depicts those struggles perfectly. Due to the sacrifice that he makes by being Spider-Man, we see him lose his job, we see him flunk his classes, we see him lose the girl of his dreams, and we even see him lose his powers. Plus, you got Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, which is one of the best comic book villain live-action adaptations. Moving on to 2005, I'm going with Revenge of the Sith. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I grew up with this franchise, and Revenge of the Sith has always been one of my favorites from the series. It's easily the best one from the prequels. I was fortunate enough to watch this in theaters for the first time last year for its 20th anniversary. Growing up, I vividly remember having the old full-screen DVD that I would play so often that it got all scratched up. Now, is it a perfect film? No. It shares similar flaws that the prequels have, which are the acting and the dialogue, but hey, I still love it. Anakin's turn to the dark side, the Mustafar lightsaber duel at the end, and the memes. I mean, you can't talk about this movie without mentioning the memes. Moving on to 2006, I'm going with The Departed. I love The Departed so much. It's my favorite Martin Scorsese film. The story is both wild and unpredictable, with so many brilliant moments and sequences that make the runtime fly by quick. The amount of twists and turns, deceit, and backstabbing, and double-crossing are executed brilliantly. It's also got one of the most stacked casts of all time that play their parts so well. I mean, having Leo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, and Jack Nicholson as your leads is a borderline cheat code. Moving on to 2007, and for this year, I'm going with Superbad. One of my favorite comedies of all time, and arguably the best coming-of-age comedy. Superbad is one of the few comedies from the 2000s that still holds up and still makes me laugh every time I watch it. It's a hilarious story of two best friends that are codependent of each other and fight with separation anxiety as their childhood comes to an end. Jonah Hill and Michael Cera work so well on screen together. Moving on to 2008, and for this year, I'm going with The Dark Knight. I mean, what can I say about The Dark Knight that hasn't already been said? It's one of the best comic book movies of all time. The Dark Knight, in a lot of ways, transcended the superhero movie genre because it's not trying to be a comic book movie, it's trying to be a great crime thriller. The score is iconic. Heath Ledger gives one of the best performances in cinematic history as the Joker. I think Aaron Eckhart gives an incredibly slept-on performance as Two-Face. And I really like how the story explores how people can hold on to their ethics and morals under pressure while the Joker is testing the limits of the citizens of Gotham and Batman himself. Moving on to 2009, I'm going with Fantastic Mr. Fox, one of my favorite Wes Anderson films. It's such a cozy watch, especially during the fall season. Now, on the surface, it's a fun, family-friendly heist movie, but at its core, it's a well-written drama about a depressed, aging fox who's suffering from midlife crisis and is struggling to let go of his wild, rebellious past. If you haven't seen this movie and you love stop-motion animation, this one is for you. Moving on to the year 2010, and I'm going with The Social Network. This is without a doubt one of the best screenplays ever written, filled with razor-sharp and rapid-fire dialogue. When you put Aaron Sorkin's masterful writing and David Fincher's masterful directing, it's a match made in heaven. Jesse Eisenberg and Andrew Garfield are spectacular in this. You could make the argument that this movie transcended the biopic genre. Instead of focusing on the development of Facebook, it tells an engaging story about friendship, betrayal, and ego. Moving on to 2011, and for this year, I'm going with The Adventures of Tintin, The Secret of the Unicorn. Now, as someone who grew up reading the Tintin comic books and watching the animated series, this movie holds a special place for me. I still remember how excited I was to watch this on the big screen back in 2011. And after the movie ended, I was in awe of the story and the motion capture animation style. Appreciate how much of a faithful adaptation this movie is to the source material and how they nailed the character depictions. It's a shame that we never got a sequel to this movie, and although it appears to be stuck in development according to Google, unless Spielberg or Peter Jackson says that it's never going to be made, I still have some hope that we're gonna get it sometime in the future. Moving on to 2012, I'm going with Django Unchained. Probably the coolest Western of the 21st century. It's gritty, it's stylish, and it's unapologetically bold. From the opening scene to the final explosion at the end, I was glued to the screen when watching this movie. Jamie Foxx is great as Django, Christoph Waltz is absolutely stellar, and Leo, the way he played Calvin Candy in this film was so perfect. It's a masterclass in dialogue and pacing. Every scene is dripping with Tarantino's signature aesthetic, with the blood and the humor and the catchy soundtrack. Moving on to 2013, for this year, I'm going with Prisoners, one of the best crime thrillers I've ever watched and one of my favorite Denis Villeneuve films. I've seen this a handful of times, and every time I rewatch it, I find newer details from the story. How this movie is equally accessible to general audiences, but still isn't afraid to be very brutal and intense at times. You also get top-tier performances from Jake Gyllenhaal, Hugh Jackman, Viola Davis, and Paul Dano. Moving on to 2014. Now, this was another tough year. I had two movies listed in my notes for this year as well. It's between Whiplash and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes for me. But I think I'm gonna go with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes is one of my favorite movie trilogies of all time, and Dawn is my favorite one from the trio. The relationship that the apes have with the humans in this film is so masterfully crafted. And not only is the story great, but it's also filled with interesting character arcs. Caesar is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. He's so interesting and compelling. And you got Koba, who's one of the best antagonists I've ever seen on screen. The visual effects are amazing, and it only goes to show that CGI has gotten worse over time with movies. This movie came out over a decade ago, and it looks better than most $200 million budget films that we're getting today. Moving on to 2015, I'm gonna go with Inside Out. This is the Pixar film with the most emotions. It has all the fun and jokes that you would expect from a Pixar film, but it also does an amazing job in visualizing what goes on in our heads with our emotions during puberty and even the stages of cognitive development, and does it in a way that's entertaining and educational. I love the message that this movie tells, which is that it's always important to allow yourself to feel every emotion, whether it's positive or negative, and not suppress any of them, because that is the key to living a fulfilling and mentally healthy life. Moving on to 2016, I'm gonna go with Train to Busan. Now, I've seen plenty of zombie horror flicks in my life, but none of them have touched me emotionally the way Train to Busan did. Not only are the zombie portrayals and the action sequences executed so well, but this movie manages to make me care about the characters. The emotions that the characters swing through as they deal with loss and pain are beautifully depicted by all the actors. It's truly a roller coaster of feels. One moment I'm content, then I'm screaming, then I'm sad, and then I'm livid. For a movie that could have easily just been another zombie ride, Train to Busan managed to be, in my opinion, the best one of them all. Moving on to 2017, for this year, I'm going with Get Out. I don't like throwing the term instant classic around too often, but Get Out is one of them ones. One of the greatest directorial debuts from Jordan Peele. And I think with this movie, he revolutionized the way people look at black horror films. The blending of comedy, horror, social commentary, tension, suspense, pacing, all together in a perfect package. Moving on to 2018, and for this year, I'm going with Avengers Infinity War. Easily my favorite MCU movie. It still to this day blows my mind how they were able to accomplish making this. They took all the characters from the Infinity Saga and brought them all together in one film while simultaneously telling a cohesive story and not making it messy. I loved seeing them all interact, and it didn't feel forced at all. I loved Thanos as the villain. They made him a very captivating character in this. And I love the bold move they made at the end, which is to let the antagonist win, which is something that they've never done before Infinity War. A major accomplishment from the MCU franchise, and I doubt any other franchise will be able to emulate that level of success. Moving on to 2019, I'm going with Parasite. This movie was the gateway for me to Korean films and made me more invested in foreign movies in general. It's one of the most engaging films from the jump because of its characters and the relationships with each other, with an insane plot twist and during the second half that blows the doors wide open. This movie shows the consequences of snooping where you shouldn't. It's also a great commentary on social classes and the contrast between the rich and the poor and how the lower class citizens are treated in today's society. It's a very intense, suspenseful watch, and I love it. Moving on to the year 2020. Now, I will say, out of all the years that I've been alive, I think 2020 was the weakest year for movies. But there is one that stood out to me the most, and that is Soul. Pixar film that deserved to be seen on the big screen, but unfortunately, due to COVID, it went straight to streaming. I like how this movie explores heavy existential themes of purpose, passion, and what makes life worth living. Unlike many films that tell you to chase your big dream, Soul argues that life's true purpose is simply living, because it is not always about the destination, it's about the journey. It teaches that everyday ordinary moments such as eating a slice of pizza or feeling a falling leaf are just as beautiful as grand achievements. It's not always about the end goal. Moving on to 2021, and for this year, I'm going with The Suicide Squad. Once upon a time, there was a disastrous DC movie that dropped in 2016 called Suicide Squad. It was one of the movies from the franchise that really hurt the DC brand and ruined its reputation. Then 5 years later, James Gunn swoops in, remakes the fuck out of it, and knocks it out of the park with The Suicide Squad. This newer version of Suicide Squad is funnier, the action sequences are a whole lot better, and it gave obscure characters like Polka Dot Man and Ratcatcher 2 deep emotional backstories, which made their fates matter more. All in all, this movie gave us a more focused, cohesive, character-driven story and ended up being one of the best DC movies. Moving on to 2022, for this year, I'm going with Babylon. This is Damien Chazelle's love letter to Hollywood, and it is a wild-ass ride. It's one of the most unhinged, out-of-pocket, balls-to-the-wall type of films, and I loved every second of it. I can understand why this movie is polarizing, but I was fully mesmerized by it. Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt are great in this, but Diego Calva is the one that stole the show for me. It's a shame that this movie flopped at the box office, but over time it managed to garner a cult following, which I'm proud to be. Moving on to 2023, and for this year, I'm going with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I remember watching Into the Spider-Verse when it came out back in 2018 and being blown away by the gorgeous animation and the story. It was a breath of fresh air for the Spider-Man movie franchise. But with Across the Spider-Verse, they somehow managed to make the animation look even better than the first one and tell a more compelling story. Miles Morales is easily becoming one of my favorite comic book characters ever. These Spider-Verse movies have so much heart and soul and peak storytelling, which is why I desperately need Beyond the Spider-Verse to come out. And if that movie ends up being on par with the first two Spider-Verse movies, this will go down as the best comic book movie trilogy of all time. Moving on to 2024, I'm going with The Wild Robot. This movie represented the pinnacle of DreamWorks animation. A beautiful story about parenthood and finding your place when you're different, told with animals and robots. It's visually stunning, the voice acting is great, the music is beautiful, and it fully captures the grandeur of Chris Sanders' vision. It's a crowd-pleasing emotional story that I connected to a lot, and I can't wait for the sequel to come out. Moving on to 2025, and I'm going with Sinners. Now, if you've watched my channel, then this shouldn't be a surprise to you. I've talked about this movie plenty of times. It's still to this day Ryan Coogler's magnum opus, Michael B. Jordan's best performance of his career. I'm glad glad that both of them received Oscars for Best Original Screenplay and Best Acting. I love how a bold and original film like this still exists in a market that's saturated with mostly IP-driven movies. Now we're off to the last year on this list, which is 2026. This year isn't over yet, so my answer could change over time, but as of right now, I'm gonna go with Obsession. Indie horror continues to strive in the 2020s decade, and Obsession is one of the strongest and most unique horror debuts. Fantastic film about a guy that makes a wish to win his crush's heart, but he soon learns after that it came with a very dark price. It got under my skin in ways that very few horror films have been able to do. I couldn't stop thinking about this movie after watching it in theaters, and I might go see it again soon. Huge shout out to Indy Navarrete. She puts on one of the best physical performances that I've ever seen in a horror movie. It literally shook me. If you haven't seen this movie, go see it. It's worth the theater experience. Well, that's the end of my list. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and be on the lookout for additional content in the future.